Meridian, Idaho and Nampa, Idaho are the two most talked about towns in the Boise area, but which one actually fits your lifestyle? Today, I'm going to be breaking it down: location, housing, traffic, community feel, so that you can make the right decision on your next place to call home. Starting with the location, Meridian is the most centrally located town in the entire Treasure Valley, with a population that just went over 120,000 people, which does lend itself to a ton of advantages, but also some disadvantages that I'll cover later on in the video. Being right next to Boise, you have pretty short commute times if you're going to be working in Boise but living in Meridian, but also if you want to go and visit one of the surrounding towns, you have quick access to all of them. And because Meridian is the center of everything, a lot of businesses have decided to open up shop there too. Whether that's going to be Topgolf or Meridian Speedway or the gigantic water park, or even a variety of stores and restaurants, a lot have moved into Meridian over the last 5 or so years. One of the biggest one being Scheels, which is a sporting goods outdoor store, and they brought a ton of people to the Meridian, Idaho area. Heading to the west is where we're going to find Nampa, which is the third largest town in the Boise, Idaho area, with a population that is just shy by a few hundred people of 120,000. It's sitting in between Meridian on the east, Lake Lowell on the west, and Caldwell to the north. Now, if we're going to be taking commute time into account, Nampa definitely has a lot longer commute into Boise than perhaps Meridian, but Nampa also has a lot more advantages because of this further distance away from Boise. For instance, you're going to have a lot quicker access to Lake Lowell, the Snake River, and the Sunny Slope wine region on the west of town. I'll come back to that later in the video. We start to see quite a distinction between the two towns when it comes to housing in several different ways. Price is going to be the obvious one, but also the types of homes. Nampa is going to get you a little better bang for your buck. For an entry-level newer home in Meridian, you're going to be looking at about the $400,000 mark and going up from there. Whereas in Nampa, the same builder, same criteria, you're going to be starting in the low 300s and going up from there. Although there is some price difference on the entry-level side of things between the two towns, where we start to really see a difference is when we get into acreage properties. Say you're looking for a house on at least 1 acre that isn't a manufactured home and doesn't need an extensive remodel. In Meridian, to fit that criteria, you need to start looking around the $850,000 mark and up, whereas in Nampa, we start to see homes fitting that criteria around the $600,000 mark. Even if we just look at the amount of homes that fit that criteria between the two towns, at the time of making this video, if I do a search on the MLS, there's 11 homes in Meridian that fit that criteria, whereas in Nampa, same criteria, there's 34 homes. So, not only are acreage properties in Meridian more expensive, they're also harder to come by, whereas in Nampa, we have a higher prevalence of acreage properties, and you're going to be able to stretch your money a little bit farther. Another thing about housing between the two towns is that a lot of Meridian's growth has happened in the last 10 years. Because of this, you don't have as many mature neighborhoods as you do in Nampa. Mature trees, the older homes, the really mature feel. Some people really like that, and if that's what you're looking for, you're going to find a higher prevalence of it in Nampa, and those older neighborhoods don't have as much of the lick and stamp kind of feel that a lot of people don't like. When it comes to schooling between the two towns, Meridian certainly does take an edge if you look at websites like niche.com or greatschools.com and look at all the reviews and ratings on there. Meridian certainly does come out on top. Now, growing up, I went through the Nampa school district, and had I not read the reviews on any of those websites, I would have said that my schooling experience was great. If there was ever a time where I needed a teacher to stay after and help me with something, there wasn't a single one that would have said no. When it comes down to lifestyle and things to do between the two towns, there's going to be a pretty stark difference. And I'll preface this by saying I'm a country boy, so Nampa is always going to come out on top on my list. But I could easily make the argument that Meridian could be better than Nampa, and it's just going to come down to your lifestyle. Lots of families have chosen to relocate to Meridian over the last handful of years because of all the entertainment and amenities that Meridian has. Outdoor shopping malls, parks, constant entertainment like mini golf, Topgolf, the Speedway, the water park, restaurants, all that kind of stuff. So if that's your kind of jazz, Meridian is going to be hard to beat. Nampa, on the other hand, is entirely different. If you're like myself and you're not a go out on the town kind of person, you're going to fit in more here. Nampa's home to Lake Lowell for kayaking, paddleboarding, fishing, all that kind of stuff, and there are tons of trails all around the lake if you want to hike, jog, ride your mountain bike, or even run.
Run for fun? What the hell kind of fun is that?
Nampa's also really close to all the wineries and the fruit orchards in the Sunny Slope area, so there's always events going on out there throughout the entire year, from wine tasting to live music and even winery tours out in that area. And of course, just west of town, we've got the Snake River for fishing and outdoor recreation. And that's one of my favorite things about living in Nampa. In the summertime, when we have the sun setting at 10 o'clock in the evening, if I finish up work early, you best believe I'm hooking up my boat or grabbing a kayak and going out to the lake or the Snake River with my fishing pole, going and catching some fish. Nampa also has one of the best farmers markets in the entire state, and it's been ranked in like the top 10 in the entire country. And this really plays into the community sense that you have in Nampa that you really don't have in Meridian. Not to mention Meridian's farmers market. It kind of sucks. For instance, there's always events going on in downtown Nampa throughout the year, whether it's Christmas Bazaar, the Farmers Market, block parties, or even the first annual beer festival that we just had last year. Even the city will close off an entire block in downtown Nampa every third Thursday of the month throughout the summer, and that's the name of this festival. It's called Third Thursday. There's live music, food, dancing, all kind of stuff that really plays into the community feel of Nampa that is missing in Meridian. So to recap that, if you like the restaurants and the big city feel and all the entertainment, Meridian is going to be a better fit for you. However, if you don't need all that, you like more of the outdoor stuff and more of the community feel, then you're really going to fit in with Nampa better. However, I'm going to offer a third option to that because I live in Nampa, so I get to enjoy everything Nampa has to offer, but I can be in Meridian, go shopping at the village, do any of that kind of stuff within 15 minutes of where I live in Nampa. So just because you live in one town doesn't mean that you absolutely can't utilize the amenities in the other towns with a totally reasonable drive time. When it comes to city management and how the two different cities operate, we see some pretty stark differences. Nampa, for instance, was ranked as the best run city for the last 8 consecutive years by WalletHub because it manages all its services in-house. Water and sewer, trash and recycling, and roads and infrastructure. The way that these things will impact actually living in Nampa is you're going to have more local control. Since the city runs its own utilities and services, all the decisions are made based on local needs instead of broader like regional or county-wide needs. And you're going to have potentially faster response times on anything like road maintenance, potholes, any water issues, anything like that, because all these services, like I said, are ran in-house. We're not waiting on external agencies to fit in the schedule. And we have greater accountability with our services because if we have an issue, we deal directly with the city instead of dealing with an external contractor. Meridian, on the other hand, outsources almost all its services. Any roads and infrastructure stuff is done by Ada County Highway District, which is county-wide. Trash and recycling is handled by Republic Services, which is a private contractor. Now, Meridian does handle its own water and sewer. However, with the growth, we could see some changes in that. The way that you might potentially see this manifesting is going to be less in the local control with the roads and infrastructure, for instance. If you have an issue with roads, something needs updated, there's a pothole, instead of going directly to the city of Meridian, you have to go through Ada County Highway District, which oversees other cities like Boise, Eagle, Star, and Kuna, which is a huge area. So they have a huge list of things to do, so it might be pretty far down the chopping block before we start to see any issues get resolved. Because all these services are outsourced, you're going to have more bureaucracy. If you have an issue, you're going to get told to go to somebody, and then that person's going to tell you to go to somebody else, and then that person's going to tell you to go somewhere else, and then you're going to come back in one big loop.
It just keeps going up and up and up.
And because of this, you're going to have a lot more growing pains in Meridian. Meridian was one of the fastest growing cities in the entire US, and it's kind of outpacing what external agencies can handle. So the growth is happening faster than what they can deal with. So you're going to have more growing pains, more traffic congestion, anything like that, because any updates take longer to get done. So what this means for future growth is Nampa's growth is going to be slower than Meridian's. However, it's going to be more controlled and more precise, whereas Meridian is going to be growing a lot faster, but all these key updates and stuff, since they're handled by external agencies, they're going to take longer, so you're going to see more growing pains in that avenue. When it comes down to taxes and spending, This is why Nampa has been ranked so well run for 8 consecutive years, because the city runs a tight ship. Anything that goes on in the city is directly for the city. We're not outsourcing anything for that. Whereas with Meridian, they're outsourcing to private contractors, sending money to county-wide regions for the entire road development system. So the key takeaway from this is that if you want a city that might be growing potentially slower but smarter, Nampa is going to be the better approach for you. But if you don't mind the growing pains and you can just get through it, Meridian could be totally fine in that avenue as well. So Nampa or Meridian could be perfect fits for you. I've done deep dives into both of these towns, 30-minute videos. Nampa right here, Meridian right here. Go give those a watch. Let me know what you think. I'm Isaaccrace with Top Idaho Real Estate.